Rock Whiting. We're here at an empty church to do a bit of a organ concert presentation. Can you tell us, what brought this about?
Well, it's hard to believe, but this is my 25th anniversary as organist and director of music at Faith Lutheran. I came in 1995. I had just been out of Oberlin Conservatory a few years. I had been in Chicago for that period, playing at the University Church there on the campus of University of Chicago. Something didn't quite feel right about Chicago, so I made the move to Boston. I always wanted to live in Boston, and so it was certainly a dream come true. Arrived in 1995, not sure what the future held. I didn't have any music gigs scheduled or planned, and all of a sudden, if I recall correctly, I was contacted to see if I would be a substitute here at Faith Lutheran Church for the organist at the time, Kelvin Book. And I remember I came in the summer and I played a couple of Sundays and felt immediately at home. Turns out then that Kelvin fairly quickly decided to move on, and I was asked to audition, and I remember the audition very well because it wasn't just coming in and playing the organ, but it was directing the choir as well. And I was a little nervous, a lot nervous directing the choir because I didn't really feel like I had a ton of training doing so, even though I had taken courses at Oberlin to do it. But, and of course, Barbara Berg was the head of the music committee at the time, and I do remember very, very distinctly the pieces that were handed to me to direct. So Let Our Lives and Lips Confess, that was one for sure, and I loved it. And we've done that numerous times since. So luckily, the audition went well, and I was offered the position then in '95. Fast forward 25 years, quarter century, and I'm still here. This is my home. It's hard to believe that I have seen members be born, be baptized, get married, move on, and of course so many friends and part of the faith family that have passed away since, that still are very much a part of the faith life today, not just in the choir, but in the congregation as well.
You've had some experience now for 25 years playing the church organ. How does it compare, if there is a comparison, to any other church or organ instruments that you've had exposure to?
Well, it's very special. It was built in 1909, and it was built by a local meaning New England company, very well known in the area, and it's not especially large in terms of the number of pipes and the number of what we call ranks. 2 keyboards, which is fairly typical, but what it is perfect for this space. It has everything I think that any organist needs to, most importantly, support the congregational singing with hymns and supporting and accompanying the choir, but as an extra bonus, it really has everything one would need to perform all styles of music, from Baroque music through the Romantic literature, through modern and contemporary music. I've never felt that it wasn't enough. It certainly, you, Alan, being in the choir and being up in the choir loft, you literally feel it shaking when all the stops are pulled, as they say.
That's true.
Yes.
And that's where that came from.
That's
pull out all the stops?
It is indeed. Pull out all the stops. And so I feel very blessed. Now, the organ has gone through many changes. It still has most of the original pipes. And in 1909, it was a little bit different. The keyboard that I play was literally attached to the cabinetry where all the pipes are. And that was very typical of the day. And it had to be that way because it used mechanical means and pulleys and little pieces called trackers and springs and wooden dowels, and when you push the note, all that mechanical stuff happened. Well, as was common in the 1950s, with electricity, it sounds crazy to say now, but sort of electricity being a very common thing to have, easily available, they were able to make these consoles and the organs a little more user-friendly. So the choir could sort of congregate. So the organist wasn't always, back to the congregation. I still am, but I have a little bit more leeway. So they pulled the console out, and then the connection now is all electronic. That doesn't mean that the pipes themselves, there's nothing else electronic about the organ, except obviously getting the air into it. But the pipes are still the pipes, and it's really very special because many of them are originally from 1909. We've had some extensive work done to it to make sure that it lasts another 100 and some years.
Do you think it's worth that kind of investment to make sure it's maintained?
I absolutely do. I know many churches have had to make difficult decisions in not being able to keep up in the maintenance of a pipe organ, and because it's costly. But it's worth the cost, it's worth the effort, and those who've sort of heard the sort of electronic equivalents of that, again, they certainly have their place, and to me it's better than nothing, and they've actually come a long way, some of the electronic instruments. But there's really just nothing like, to me, the sound of a true pipe organ, and this one really has become a friend. I haven't been able to play it for the last 6 months. This is, practically the first time I've even, practiced, and I feel certainly a little out of shape, a little rusty.
We'll edit all that stuff out in post-production.
I'm hoping, thank you, do that. But I'm hoping I have an easy audience that are going to give me a pass. But I was absolutely delighted to be asked to come and play and to share some of my favorite pieces that I played over the years. But these pieces that I've selected have very special meaning to me.
Well, since you've had a nice segue into that, can you tell us what those pieces that you've selected are?
You got it. The first piece is by a Northern Germanic early Baroque composer named Dietrich Buxtehude, and he was revered by a young Johann Sebastian Bach, so much so that when Bach was 20 years old and had a position, he knew that Buxtehude was playing and teaching in a nearby town. Well, by nearby, I mean hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And obviously in that time, that was a considerable trek. It is presumed that young Bach walked the entire way. He obtained permission from his employer at the time. He was the director of music, as they called a cantor at the time, and he got permission to leave for a month. And well, he walked, he loved what he saw, he learned from his revered idol, and he stayed for 4 months. Well, that didn't go very well when he returned, and he got into quite a bit of trouble. And he kind of stayed into trouble oftentimes through his life. But Buxtehude, what he did, he was just the most, idolized and revered organist of the day. He was really working out all sorts of, and refining technique and fugal practices. And so you can hear a little bit of, well, quite a bit of kind of young Bach. When Bach shows off, you can hear a bit of this Buxtehude. What I picked was one of his well-known toccatas, and it's the Toccata in F major. It's short, but it's just a wonderful, florid, wakes you up, has a nice tune, and gets very dramatic in the middle. But so I thought it was a great way to sort of, kick it off and to prove that this instrument can play those kinds of pieces from the Baroque era.
Nice. So let's hear how that piece sounds played on the organ here at Faith Lutheran Church. So now we're going on to our second piece. Which one was that, Rock?
Yep. So I mentioned Bach earlier and Buxtehude being an influence. So now we're going to move on into Johann Sebastian Bach, which, as an organist, it's probably not surprising that Bach is my favorite composer. That tends to be, go hand in hand with being an organist. He was the icon of the organ world at the time, a renowned improviser and composer and player, and a feared tester of new organs of the time. And he would again pull out all the stops and really test an instrument's metal. So I've decided to play, though, something a little more gentle. It's from a collection called the Orgelbüchlein, which means the Little Organ Book. It's also known as the Liturgical Year. It was intended to be a collection of 164 pieces, all developed around what would have been very familiar chorales, or what we know as hymns, hymn tunes of the day. And he did not finish 164, he only completed 45. It is thought that most of these pieces were composed while he was in prison. And again, like I said before, he kind of got into trouble quite a bit through his life. He was probably known as being a bit stubborn, and he apparently had an obstinate attitude regarding being released from the Duke of Weimar's service, and the Duke didn't like how he was behaving, so they threw him in jail for a while. Well, a lot of people would probably just sit and moan and whine and complain. Not Bach. he composed the majority of these pieces without an instrument nearby, and they've become a foundation of the organ world in the literature, and many young students. I was one of them. That was the first thing they had to do, the hurdle. They had to play and learn every single of the 45 chorale preludes. This one is called Ich ruf zu dir, Herr Jesu Christ. I call to thee, Lord Jesus Christ. And boy, if you could say that Bach, was a romantic composer, meaning, late 19th century, and beautiful melodies and sort of almost lush harmonies, this is kind of proof. A lot of people think Bach is sort of sterile and mathematical, mechanical, and this just sort of, pulls at the heartstrings.
Nice. So let's hear that piece from Bach. Our third piece that you wanted to present, what was that, Farak?
So I wanted to play some pieces too that would be familiar to the congregation here and those listening. And one of my favorite hymn tunes is called Beach Spring, and we know it. One of the familiar lyrics to it, or text, is Lord, whose love and humble service. And this comes from 1844 from a well-known collection, an American-created, American-composed collection called the Sacred Harp. And this was a whole sort of school of music making at the time that even goes back before 1844. It goes back to even the colonial era, in using the types of harmonies and sort of skips and the thirds and a lot of fourths, and the school of singing that sort of arose out of that was called the Sacred Harp Singing, and it was based on what they call shape notes, and it was more a visual way, even for people who may not have known how to read music, they were able to sort of at least visually see that the note went up, the note went down, and sort of how much to go up and down. But I just love this tune, and the tune is, to me, just really emphasizes sort of Americana and that beautiful kind of tune making of that era. And this is a piece that it's a contemporary piece, and it's basically a prelude and then a fugue that comes after. So sort of the fugue style of the Baroque era, except using a more contemporary hymn tune.
That sounds very interesting. Nice contradictions or contrasting there. Let's hear that piece played here at Faith Lutheran Church on the church organ. 3 down. How many more have we got, Rock?
Oh, we've got a couple more.
Couple more pieces. So what's our 4th piece going to be?
Well, I thought we'd throw in a little Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, Mozart is not known really almost at all as an organ composer. He obviously is known as a great keyboard composer and symphonic composer and opera. But, the organ wasn't really his thing. And he actually never wrote for the organ outright. However, organists have sort of usurped some pieces that he wrote that kind of lent themselves to the instrument. He wrote a few for what was called a mechanical clock, and that was literally what it sounds like. It was a clock, but it had mechanisms and pipes in it, similar to a modern-day player piano. And so they sort of, start her up and with no live player playing, and the piece would play. Well, the piece I'm going to play for you it's an Adagio that he wrote, interestingly, in his very last year of life, in 1791. And in that year, or in that era, the instrument known as the glass harmonica was very popular. And if you know the concept of a glass partially filled with water, and you dip your finger in the water and you rub it around the rim, that's exactly the same concept. And the great inventor who created this, who really probably refined this maybe a sort of archaic or clunky version of it, was our very own Benjamin Franklin. And so he developed this and was able to mass produce the glass harmonica. It became wildly popular. Obviously, if you know that sound, it's a little bit eerie sounding and sort of otherworldly. And then it made its way to Europe and became, there were concerts where the glass harmonica was played. And so Mozart, really wanting to make money, I don't think he chose to write these pieces, but he always was welcoming money, especially at this phase in his life. He was nearly destitute. Wrote a number of pieces, and this one is just a charming, fairly simplistic, but just absolute 100% Mozart. And I've used a very simple registration, meaning the pipes that I'm using on the organ, just very simple, just a flute, what's called a flute stop, and a string stop. And it gives a possible sort of suggestion of kind of what that kind of tone would have sounded like.
All right, nice. Let's listen to our 4th piece, Adagio by Mozart. And now our fifth piece, what's that on our repertoire?
Well, I'm definitely being nostalgic here and pulling out a piece that I played since I was a teenager. And it's a contemporary piece and by John Wilson. And I learned this piece probably when I was, I don't know, 14 or so. I played it at the Methodist church where I learned to play the organ, and I was organist at age 13. And my mother absolutely loved it. It was one of my mother's all-time favorites. She loved the hymn, which is For the Beauty of the Earth, one of my favorite hymns too. It's not a complicated piece, but there's something about it. There's something about the chord progressions, the way it builds. And I have played this in honor and memory of my mother many times. And those of you who were here 15 years ago, when this church celebrated my 10th anniversary, and again, I will absolutely never forget how special that was. This church stuck my mother in, flew her here, hid her for a day or two, and then surprised me with her walking out on that morning. And it's one of those moments that just is top in my entire life. I'll never forget it. And I know I played that piece, knowing that she was here then, after I discovered. I think I switched out the postlude that day and played that. And I played it at her memorial service, and I generally try to play it around her birthday every year. And it just is very special to me. It's a beautiful tune, a great little piece, and again, it just has a lot of meaning to me.
Very nice. And now you have shared how profound that piece is for you, and thank you very much for bringing that to our attention and for sharing it with us today. This fifth piece, Rox plays For the Beauty of the Earth. how shall we finish?
Well, I thought we would do something that was fitting and appropriate, specific to this church, sitting on this granite. So what better to play than Built on the Rock? And it's a toccata. The tune name is called Kirken, church. And a lot of people ask, why is this kind of church special? Why is this physical space special? And once I show them the structure and the fact that it was literally built out of what it's sitting on by a host of ancestors of some of the congregations still, quarry workers, that were on a strike in 1890s, and to just see how beautiful the structure is. And again, we've got so much around it. You still see the rock it's sitting on, you still see the garden, and it just, I think, is special to me. It's I think a beloved hymn to Lutherans in particular, but I think it has special meaning here at Faith Lutheran Church, literally built on the rock in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Built on the Rock, our ending piece or last piece. And thank you very much, Rock, for coming in and joining, presenting and sharing your talent with us. And we hope to have many years to come.
Thank you so much.